It is 8:29 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. It is the 27th day of August, 2026, and this is episode 1381 of Bitcoin. And first up today, Coinbase and Better Mortgage have announced general availability of Bitcoin-backed mortgages. So it looks like they've rolled out Bitcoin-backed mortgages to the general public. Like I said, that's going to be first up today here on the Bitcoin and Podcast with me, your host, David Bennett, bringing you all the news about Bitcoin you can use and macro from around the world as well here on the Bitcoin and Podcast. Later on, we're going to get into Core Lightning has got a problem because you thought that we had completely finished up with the cold card hack and AI. Well, no. Now there's some issues, not with the Lightning Network in general, a particular implementation of Lightning Network. So we'll give you that one. Bank of England setting new innovation mandate covering stablecoins. And, as usual, you're too late. Bithumb wins a lawsuit. This has to do with that 620,000 Bitcoin fat finger problem they had a couple of months ago. And then in the second part of the show, forget Trump, dude. Democrats will be fine, says VanEck when it comes to how Bitcoin's going to be treated. Not sure if I buy it, but we'll see what VanEck has to say about it. And a quantum fix proposed by Bitcoin researchers. That and the fact that we've actually had the first quantum-resistant Bitcoin transaction executed. That will be the last of the show. So let's go up to the front of and get to this one about Coinbase and Better Mortgage announcing the general availability of Bitcoin-backed mortgages. This is out of Bitcoin Magazine. Matthew DeSalvo is writing it. Coinbase and NASDAQ-listed Better Mortgage have announced the availability of Bitcoin-backed mortgages for Americans. The crypto exchange and lender said on Wednesday that the service was designed in accordance with the Federal National Mortgage Association, or Fannie Mae. Coinbase and Better announced the funding of the first Bitcoin-backed mortgage back in June. The service now hopes to cater to younger wannabe homeowners who have Bitcoin holdings. Quote, in 2025, high interest rates, record home prices, and limited inventory pushed the median age of first-time home buyers to 40, says Chief Technology Officer at Better Mortgage, Ziggy Johnson. Would you have named your child Ziggy? Come on, be honest. Be honest with me. Quote, Coinbase counts millions of monthly users worldwide, and by allowing Coinbase One members to pledge crypto as collateral without selling their holdings, we're opening up a new path toward home ownership for a generation of borrowers whose wealth increasingly lives on chain, end quote. Ben Shen, head of financial services and loyalty products at Coinbase, added, quote, by enabling borrowers to pledge their digital assets in a mortgage underwriting process, we are allowing crypto to be more useful and powerful in the real world, expanding the pathways to home ownership while preserving long-term investment positions, end quote. The announcement added that Coinbase One members will be eligible for a rebate equal to 1% of the mortgage value up to a maximum of $10,000. The debut loan by Coinbase and Better Mortgage was closed by a married couple in Michigan, Joe and Amy, in June. The couple used their Bitcoin holdings as collateral to fund their down payment rather than liquidating their position, the company said at the time. Crypto-backed lender Milo said earlier this year that it had surpassed $100 million in digital asset mortgages, including a record $12 million loan, as more high net worth and institutional clients were using Bitcoin as collateral for home financing. Bitcoin-backed loans are still a niche product, but one of the biggest lenders in the space, Ledin, has released research claiming that the space could grow from its current size of $3 billion to $1 trillion in the next 10 years. So it appears that this pilot test between Coinbase and Better Mortgage has morphed into general availability for Americans to get mortgages with their Bitcoin. And I guess shit coins as well. I haven't read that much more into it, but home prices are sticky. It's like the last place that people who don't want to get into equities or already have enough equities there, they need to park their cash somewhere. This is what I'm talking about. These are people that need to park cash somewhere because they're not stupid, but they're not smart enough to just buy Bitcoin. However, I don't blame them. I get it. Homes, I get it. Except that the problem really becomes when everybody does that and it causes home prices to rise and then remain elevated for years because nobody wants the housing market to crash because that's where all these people have parked their cash. Not all of their cash, but a good portion enough to matter. And it causes problems for people who are trying to just buy a home. I mean, I get it. And if you're holding Bitcoin, this may be a way to circumvent that entire issue. But please, please, for the love of God, be careful. Because liquidations can happen. Now, if I remember right, the Coinbase and Better Mortgage thing was promising no liquidations under any circumstances as long as you can make the house payment. Well, take that with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean that they're lying. It just means I'm tired of trusting people. I just am. After the Coinbase incident, I'm just like, I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, yeah, cool story, bro. Talk to me in 40 years when the story is still holding water, and then maybe I'll actually believe it. Talk about a trustless society, because there's trustless and then there's like, I've lost my trust, and I'm sort of on the latter camp there. But this brings to memory something that I listened to yesterday. Was it Ben Kinsey, the guy, the actor dude that used to play the kid in the OC, if you ever watched that show? It's either Ben Kinsey or I think it's actually Ben McKenzie. Anyway, he's been on a rant and raving about how Bitcoin is a scam and all crypto is a scam. And half of what he thinks is actually correct. 99.999% of crypto is 100% pure scam. Whether it's straight up fraud, affinity scam, grift, graft, I don't care. It's all bullshit. But he has this problem of equating Bitcoin with all of that. And he can't be further from the truth. And now I listened to a 30-minute interview with him on, I don't know, some podcast yesterday. I think it was called Reveal. I've never seen anybody not understand something so completely. I've seen several people get shit wrong, but dude, Ben McKenzie is just, at this point, it's embarrassing because of the amount of time and his own money that he's invested into getting shit wrong. I just don't get it. This guy has spent like the last 2 years of his life being pissed off that he lost money on Bitcoin because his entry point was higher than when he decided to exit. That's essentially, he's mad. And what did he do with his anger? He went on a tirade. He started spending time on Capitol Hill. He started doing interviews. But then I come to find out the man actually self-funded an entire movie about how bad crypto was. But he keeps coming back to Bitcoin. He keeps relocating Bitcoin in this pile of shit. And it was really hard to listen to this interview yesterday. And it is Reveal. I just looked it up. It was on Reveal. If you want to listen to somebody get something horribly wrong and like literally mixing apples and oranges together and calling them the same thing, for God's sakes, you got to listen to this interview. But I warn you, it is cringe AF, dude. And I'm sure Ben McKenzie is not happy with this mortgage-backed deal. Let's get on to Core Lightning confirming multiple vulnerabilities as it prepares security update. Ezra Reguera is writing this one for Cointelegraph. Core Lightning, an open source implementation of Bitcoin's Lightning Network, has confirmed multiple vulnerabilities and urged node operators to install a forthcoming security update. Let me pause right now. There are essentially two main implementations of the Lightning Network. The Lightning Network is a protocol. Like Nostr is a protocol, like HTTP is a protocol. It's a protocol. The protocol itself seems fine. And I'm not going to say is fine because I don't know. And I don't want to lead you down that path. But it's the protocol. There are two implementations of that protocol. One is the Core Lightning protocol, or the Core Lightning implementation of the Lightning Network. The second is LND, and that's from Lightning Labs. These are the guys that actually built out the first series of implementations around the Lightning protocol, and actually kind of instantiated the Lightning protocol itself, but I don't want to get there. What I'm trying to say is that Core Lightning, as one of the two major Lightning Network implementations, has a problem. The Lightning Network itself doesn't seem to have an issue. LND, the first implementation of the Lightning protocol, does not seem to have an issue. But if you're running Core Lightning, you've got a problem on your Lightning node. Let's continue. On Thursday, Core Lightning said it had been assessing a high volume of AI-generated common vulnerabilities and exposures, known as CVE, and found that several are actually real. The project told operators not to shut down their nodes completely, but to restart them with --offline, which prevents payments from entering, leaving, or routing through that particular node in a subsequent post. Core Lightning clarified that upgrading to its primary recommendation while restarting with --offline is an alternative for operators who have not yet upgraded. The guidance gives operators an alternative for protecting their nodes until they upgrade without actually having to shut down the underlying software entirely. Core Lightning has not disclosed the nature or severity of the vulnerabilities, published CVE identifiers, or reported any related exploitation or losses. Core Lightning said keeping the daemon active allows it to follow the Bitcoin blockchain and respond if a counterparty force closes a channel, which a stop node cannot do. Operators using --offline were advised to remove it after upgrading, or their nodes will remain disconnected. The newly confirmed flaws are separate from remote denial of service vulnerabilities disclosed in May and July, which were patched in earlier releases. So that's the end of the article. Where are we? Well, if you're running Core Lightning implementation, you need to restart your node, but when you restart it, it needs to be restarted with --offline. Now, I don't run, I think it's CLI. It's like there's LND and CLI. Core Lightning implementation, CLI, is done by, I think was built by Blockstream, whereas LND is built by Lightning Labs. This is only for the Blockstream version CLI Core Lightning implementation. All right. So I don't know. You're going to have to get into a command line interface, I suppose. I haven't really ever played around with CLI at all. But however it is that you do this, you should seriously consider getting into your Lightning node, go into your CLI implementation, figuring out how to give it a command so that on restart, and I presume that this would actually go into the boot up file that it reads before it actually boots up the implementation. And a line on there is going to read -- offline. The node will actually be online. It just won't receive or send or route payments. And it allows people to force close their channels with you if they want to do that. And like they said, if you just power off your node and say, fuck it, I don't want to deal with this stuff, then if you've got open Lightning channels, not only are they inactive, if somebody really needs to close a channel with you, they can't, which is one of the problems with the Lightning Network in general, but it's never really bothered me that much. So what we're looking for now is, are there going to be any vulnerabilities found in the LND daemon as part of the as one of the implementations of the Lightning Network? I don't know. I'm going to say probably. And that's what I run. I run LND. So I'm not affected by the CLI problem, but I could be affected in the future by an LND issue. Because again, when we live on this side of the Rubicon, as I've said on many occasions, we cross the Rubicon with the whole CoinKite cold card deal. We don't live in Kansas anymore, Toto. We're not there. And we're never, ever, ever going back. We now live with this entity known as artificial intelligence that is really fucking good at reading code. A lot of people like, oh, it's really good at writing code. Yeah, well, it's really good at reading code. And it's really good at reading open source code. And it's really good at finding vulnerabilities in open source code. And it's really good at drawing up ways to exploit those vulnerabilities. And we're never going back across that river. We are here, and we're never, never, ever going to be able to get to a place where AI wasn't just continuously being used to search for how to steal. Because I guess maybe it is right. Maybe I've gotten it wrong all this time. Maybe the human species default is steal from everybody you can and destroy their lives and not give a shit about anybody but yourself. You know, maybe we should all be treated like fucking criminals and money launderers by people like the SEC and the Justice Department and the United States Congress and every government under the sun, because apparently we can't stop stealing from each other. You know, we're too concerned with taking each other's shit rather than building our own. And then when we do, when the lucky few who can build their own and be successful at doing it, then they get into this position where they can't do anything more than that because they're constantly defending against people that want to steal their shit all the time. I try to remain a fan of humanity. I really do. But every single fucking time I look around, it's just a bunch of goddamn hairless apes running over each other for a goddamn dime. And it's sickening. And it'd be, well, I wonder why we don't have flying cars. That's why we don't have flying cars, motherfucker. Because we're too busy stealing from each other. And it's sick. I'm going to collect myself before we do this one. Bank of England set for new innovation mandate covering stablecoins. Helen Parts, Cointelegraph. The UK is moving to put stablecoins at the center of a new Bank of England mandate aimed at supporting innovation in digital payments. Yeah, right. The government plans to give the Bank of England, the UK's central bank, a secondary objective to support innovation in payment systems and emerging forms of digital money, His Majesty's Treasury announced on Thursday. The mandate will cover payment systems that use digital settlement assets such as stablecoins, while financial stability will remain the Bank of England's primary objective. The proposal comes as the UK steps up its work on stablecoin through regulatory changes, payment experiments, and closer coordination with the United States. Oh well. The new responsibility would extend an existing approach used to regulate central counterparties and central securities depositories, which help clear, hold, and settle financial assets. Under the proposed change, the central bank would report annually to Parliament on its progress toward payment innovation objectives. Quote, developments in digital payments technology, including tokenization and distributed ledger technologies, have the potential to transform financial markets across the globe, City Minister Lucy Rigby said. The government expects to implement the objective through amendments to the Financial Services and Markets Bill, which is scheduled for further debate in the House of Lords on September the 7th and 9th. The new mandate's impact may depend on how Bank of England uses its annual reporting requirements. Maxim Sakharov, co-founder and CEO of on-chain banking infrastructure provider WeFi, told Cointelegraph, quote, the objective is secondary to financial stability, so it overrides nothing. But the bank will have to publish an annual account of its innovation efforts in payments and digital money, Sakharov said. He also pointed to requirements for systemic stablecoin issuers to hold at least 30% of their backing assets in non-interest-bearing deposits at the central bank. Quote, the reserve split is the first thing to fix, he said, adding that the requirements could determine whether a stablecoin business is commercially viable or not. The new mandate follows increasing UK efforts involving stablecoins or crypto assets designed to maintain a stable value by tracking assets like the dollar. In August, a group participating in the Bank of England's Digital Pound Lab I'm sorry. Mind went somewhere where it shouldn't have gone. I can't help but think of the movie The Office or Office Space. Federal pound me in the ass prison. Anyway, Digital Pounding Lab began testing whether a stablecoin and a simulated digital British pound could work together in a cross-border trade payment. The experimental platform does not use real customers or money. In mid-July, the UK and the US published a joint statement on stablecoins, with the government saying they, quote, intend to enable the use of stablecoins in cross-border finance and called for greater alignment on the regulatory frameworks. Bank of England also previously dropped plans to limit stablecoin holdings to 20,000 British pounds for individuals and 10 million pounds for businesses, replacing them with a temporary 40 billion pound issuance cap for each systemic stablecoin. Woo! Okay. So again, the UK, because they are working really closely with the United States, maybe it's not too late for them. Because the United States was honestly the first country in the world to jump all over stablecoin. Because it's going to enable us to print more debt than you've ever possibly conceived of in your entire life. But that's a different matter entirely. The US has embraced stablecoins. Maybe not the population, but the government, regulatory guys, Congress, all those guys, they are all over stablecoins. And because of that, anybody who's connected to the United States and is quote unquote friendly with the United States, like the UK is, are going to be able to reap the benefits of not being late to the party. And I'm not suggesting that I love stablecoins. I'm not that big of a fan of them. I just recognize that they're not going away because apparently quite a few people find that they have utility. And I can't just not look at that. My old days in philosophy, reading John Stuart Mill and totalitarianism, utilitarianism. I mean, there's a whole book that this guy sat down and wrote. John Stuart Mill. The book is boring as fuck, but it's a philosophy book. What do you expect? It has some decent shit in there. At least different ways of thinking about things. And if I've got a mass of people that are doing a thing and I come to find out that they're doing that thing because it has utility to them, I automatically recognize I could have a titanium pry bar and I'm not pulling them out of that hole. So that's one of the reasons why I still talk about stablecoin on this particular show, even though it is a Bitcoin focused show. I'm also not going to sugarcoat stuff. Stablecoins are here. They're not going away. The US was first to jump on it. The UK, because of their relationship with the United States, is probably going to be just fine as far as stablecoin and holding some kind of footing in the future financial system to come. But we don't have to worry about that because some of us are hungry for food. And if you're cooking food, you might consider getting Great Ghee. Great Ghee, that's Ghee. Get it at greatghee.com. Fat done right. Why? Because if you don't know what ghee is, it's essentially clarified butter. The butter is melted, it's heated to a particular temperature, it's held at that temperature for just a perfect amount of time so that proteins and sugars and excess water can either boil off or bake together and settle down to the bottom to where you get nothing but pure 100% grass-fed beef animal fat from milk, from grass-fed cows. And I think they're A2 cows, but go to greatghee.com, get yourself a jar of this stuff. You can use it to, oh my God, get one of the things about ghee that's really nice is it has a really high smoking temperature, which means it can take a lot of heat damage before it starts screwing up, which means you can cook a steak in a very, very hot skillet and have a perfect brown on both sides if you use a little bit of great ghee as the fat for doing that. It's also essential for Indian food cooking. If you like Indian food and you've learned how to cook it, and by God, if you've learned how to cook any amount of Indian food by yourself at all, hats off to you because it's a bitch. Ask me how I know. You have to have ghee for that. You have to have ghee. And what's great about ghee is that it enables massive amounts of butter to be stored at room temperature for years at a time. If you do it right, you can store butter for years at room temperature. And the way you do it is ghee. And if you don't want to figure out how to make it yourself, go to greatghee.com. That's greatghee.com. Use coupon code Bitcoin and you won't get anything off, but what you will get is the ability to let Great Ghee know that I made Great Ghee a sale here on the Bitcoin and podcast through the Circle P. It's where I bring plebs just like you with goods and services to plebs just like you who want to buy those goods and services. But, and here's the catch, you're going to be buying it in Bitcoin because if you're not selling it in Bitcoin, you're not in the Circle P. Great Ghee takes Bitcoin for all of Great Ghee's products. Go to greatghee.com. That's greatghee.com. Get yourself a jar of ghee. It's fat done right. Bithumb wins lawsuit over proceeds from 620,000 Bitcoin fat finger error, according to a report. Danny Park writing from the block, and he says a South Korean court has ruled in favor of Bithumb in one of 4 unjust enrichment lawsuits against users who sold Bitcoin mistakenly credited to their accounts earlier this year. On Thursday, the Seoul Central District Court ordered the defendant to return proceeds from the sale of the Bitcoin that the crypto exchange erroneously credited. Local news outlet Digital Asset reported. Now, the case, which is the second largest of the 4 related civil suits Bithumb filed in March, involved roughly 194 million Korean won. The largest one is worth 500 million won. In February, the South Korean exchange accidentally credited 620,000 Bitcoin, then worth around $43 billion, internally to hundreds of users as part of a promotional campaign giveaway. The error reportedly stemmed from a single staff member inputting the reward unit as BTC instead of Korean won. The incident briefly caused the BTC KRW pair on the platform to collapse about 15%, affecting a larger pool of users. It also led authorities to launch an investigation into Bithumb, citing a lack of internal controls and risk management. Meanwhile, Bithumb announced earlier this month that it was targeting to complete an initial public offering in 2028. Yeah, well, it's not going to work out so well if you keep fat fingering $43 billion worth of assets. Dude, let's run the numbers. CNBC Futures and Commodities, where Brent North Sea oil is up 1.12% to 88.82 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate up a third to 82.5. Natural gas 1.24% to the upside, $2.87 per thousand cubic feet. Gasoline up a third to the magic number, $3.33 per gallon. Murban crude down 3% to $90.83. Metals are raging except for copper, but palladium is up 0.75 of a point. Gold is up a quarter to 46.63 and 7 dimes. Platinum is up a third. Silver is up almost 2 points, knocking on $70 an ounce. Copper is down 0.19%. Ag is mostly mixed today. Biggest winner is chocolate. Nice. 5.5% to the upside. Coffee is the biggest loser, 3.6 to the downside. Live cattle up 1 1/3. Lean hogs unchanged. Feeder cattle up 1.73%. S&P is up 2/3 of a point. The NASDAQ is up just over a point. The Dow is up 1/3 of a point, and the S&P Mini is essentially moving sideways. And then there's Bitcoin, chilling at $80,480 a coin. That's a $1.62 trillion market cap. We can get 17.5 ounces of shiny metal rocks with our one Bitcoin, of which there are 20,075,766.76 of. Average fees per block are nominal. There's about 45 blocks carrying 83,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting to clear at high priority rates of 2 sats per VByte. Low priority will get you in at 0.7. 889 exahashes per second is the hash rate for the Bitcoin network at this time. And from yesterday's episode of Bitcoin and Dust in the Wind, Nick Dose with 265 sats says cheers. Jason High with 250 sats says FYI. Soap Miner also sells deodorant. Jason, what are you trying to say? We've never met. You don't know if I stink. Why are you telling me about deodorant? But yes, Soap Miner does also sell deodorant. And he also sells a lip balm, by the way. And I got a few from Mutum 8. I actually got quite a bit here. One, I follow another Bitcoin podcaster that relies on Boost, but only posts once a week. And he's able to pull in routinely over 500,000 sats in a week, and sometimes over 1 million. Bitcoin and provides as much, if not more value. Number 2, I like Bitcoin and to be getting the appreciation it deserves for your hard work putting the daily show together by providing a little value myself. Number 3, spacesprotocol.org is a Bitcoin-anchored naming system that allows sovereign control over human conveyable names without the interference of any central authority. What Bitcoin is to money, Nostr is to social media, and Spaces is to name. Interesting. That's the Spaces protocol. So is it spacesprotocol.org or is it spaces.org? Anyway, his 4th boost, and by the way, these start at 101 sats, go to 102, 103, 104, 105, and 106. Number 4 at 104 sats says Spaces names have a top-level component to the right of the @ separator that is attained through an auction, and a left subspace component that are tracked with a zero-knowledge proof tree. I've built a platform for monetizing subspaces and want to donate 50% of the revenue of Bitcoin of the @Bitcoin and names to the show. Oh, nice. A subname like Noster Gang is 75,000 sats plus transaction fees. So today, approximately $30 would go straight to me, your host, David Bennett. Number 6, if this piques your interest of you and your listeners, please schedule some face-to-face time with me at cal.com/andrew.lund, L-U-N-D-E. I should have entered these in reverse. Dude, don't worry about it, Mutum. You're fine. And check your signal DMs. I finally was able to get back to you. I also sent you an email. Kids just started going back to school, dude. That's why it's taken me a while to get back in touch with you. I mean, when kids go back to school, dude, it is a madhouse around here. So my apologies for not getting back to you. Yeah, Mutum, we'll talk. I want to know more about this Spaces thing. Noster Gang with her customary 101 sat boost says, thank you. No, thank you. Psychos with 100 says, a hung jury isn't an acquittal. It's a mistrial. Jurors aren't voting. They're deliberating to arrive at consensus. If they can't, it's a do-over. Double jeopardy only applies if a verdict is reached. Okay, thank you, Psychos. That's what I was thinking, but, needed some confirmation on that. Oh, by the way, here's another Mutum one with 100 says, see yesterday's boost. Seems it's impossible to get up early enough to boost yesterday's show such that it gets a mention today. Oh, okay. Actually, let me go look at that because let's see, that would be from the It's for the Children. And here's Mutum 8 with 10,101 sats says, can you claim title to your name? Spacesprotocol.org is a naming protocol native to Bitcoin. Bitcoin anchors trust. Okay. So there you go, Mutum. I got your boost in, even if it was a little bit late. That's the weather report. Welcome to part 2 of the news that you can use, where we forget the Trump bump. Bitcoin would be fine under Democrats, says VanEck. I'm not so sure, but Matthew DeSalvo writing for Bitcoin Magazine. President Donald Trump may be the most crypto-friendly leader in the U.S. so far. But what would happen to Bitcoin if the Democrats were to get back power? Well, it wouldn't necessarily be bad, according to asset manager VanEck's head of digital assets research, Matthew Sigel. Speaking on CNBC on Wednesday, the analyst also said that contrary to what many believe, ex-President Joe Biden was not anti-Bitcoin. Yeah, but everything under him was. I'm just saying. Republicans have repeatedly blasted Democrats as anti-crypto. Regulators under ex-President Joe Biden cracked down on digital asset companies, filing various lawsuits. Quote, Biden was actually okay for Bitcoin, Sigel said. It's the rest of cryptos that might have a problem if Democrats get back in power. He added, quote, with the ascendant socialist wing of the Democratic Party, I can tell you here in New York City that there are plenty who are reminded of why there is value in a decentralized, scarce asset that can't be printed and spent on nonsense, end quote. President Trump campaigned on a ticket to help the digital asset industry and has passed a number of pro-crypto executive orders, including the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. The price of Bitcoin surged off the back of Trump's 2024 victory, yada, 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 and we know. But pro-crypto lawmakers had hoped that the Clarity Act would pass before Congress broke for August recess, but the vote slipped to September after Democrats balked at the latest draft, and some Republican senators have accused Democrats of deliberately holding the legislation back. Sigel's comments echo those of Coinbase's chief policy officer, Faryar Shirzad, who said in July that crypto was, quote, maybe the most bipartisan issue in Washington. That one I kind of agree with, honestly. Speaking about the delay in a vote on the Clarity Act, Shirzad said that while some lawmakers were holding back the long-awaited legislation, younger Democrats were for the framework. Quote, a lot of the opposition is generational, so it is Democrats who oppose it. But I think younger members who understand the technology understand that money is transforming how we should engage financially, how we need to adapt, and so it's really a generational shift, he said on the Hill's Rising show. Okay, well, whatever. One thing is for sure, I think the Republicans are going to lose their ass in the midterms because things are not going well for citizens of the United States. Nobody wanted to go to war with Iran. And it's almost as if Trump purposely scuttled the Republicans' chances of remaining in power past the midterms, even though historically that kind of doesn't normally happen. It really is normal for no matter what party is in power, which means holds the executive office and holds the majority of Congress. In the midterms, that has a tendency to flip in Congress to where it's no longer the party of the president. It ends up being the party of the opposition. That's just statistically true. And it doesn't matter who's sitting in the big chair. They could be red, could be blue, Republican, Democrat. It doesn't really matter. It's midterms always seem to do this. Not every single time, but very often. So often that even without the Iran war going on, we might have definitely seen a degradation in the Republicans' power in Congress over midterms. But now, because you got high gas prices due to high oil prices, and that causes a whole shitload of downstream effects like high shipping costs, everything going up in price, and mostly food. These are all noticeable effects for the population of countries. And that's what you don't want. You don't want the population to notice that they are basically getting hosed. You want it to be done in secret through slight increases in inflation over a longer period of time. You don't want to compress all this shit because it makes bright lights flash in front of people that say something's wrong. And when shit's wrong, people think the other people will know what to do and then they get elected. And of course, it's not true. They don't know what they're doing. They are just all in it for the power. I don't know. It's all just too silly. But, I'm not planning on moving from the United States. However, my hermitage meter is starting to continue to rotate to the right side of the dial. Meanwhile, Bitcoin researchers propose quantum fix that would not crowd out transactions. And this is out of CoinDesk. It's written by Sharo Malwa. Researchers at Blockstream, a Bitcoin infrastructure firm whose engineers have contributed to Bitcoin blockchain's core software for more than a decade, published a proposal on Thursday for shrinks, a way of signing Bitcoin transactions that could withstand quantum computers without sharply reducing the number of transactions that fit a block. Bitcoin proves ownership using digital signatures built on a branch of mathematics known as elliptic curve cryptography. Those signatures allow someone to prove they hold the private key controlling their Bitcoin without revealing the key itself. But it is theorized that a sufficiently powerful quantum computer running Shor's algorithm, the 1994 method that lets a quantum machine unpick the maths ordinary computer would take millions of years to solve, could eventually break that protection. Such a system could work backwards from a public key visible on a blockchain to calculate the private key, allowing an attacker to forge a signature and spend all the coins. A large amount of Bitcoin already sits at addresses where public keys have been exposed, either because of how older addresses were constructed or because coins from them have previously been spent. This includes over 1.1 million Bitcoin belonging to the network's pseudonymous creator Satoshi Nakamoto. Replacing those signatures runs into a size problem. Post-quantum signatures standardized by the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, can be dozens of times larger than the signature Bitcoin uses today. And Bitcoin blocks have limited space, so larger signatures leave room for fewer transactions. Blockstream estimated that Bitcoin could process around 6.5 transactions per second if every transaction used today's compact Schnorr signatures, falling to about 0.36 transactions per second with SLHDSA, the hash-based scheme NIST has standardized. Shrinks gets that back to roughly 3 transactions per second. Its signature started at about 324 bytes compared to 64 for Schnorr signatures, growing by around 16 bytes each time a key is issued, with the configuration reaching 3 transactions per second using 580 byte signatures. As such, 5 times larger does not cost 5 times the space because SegWit, a 2017 upgrade, gives the part of a transaction that holds signatures a discount. Shrinks is built using SHA-256. It's the same hash function already used throughout Bitcoin, including its mining system, and that means that security does not depend on introducing an entirely new underlying mathematical assumption. Jonas Nick, who designed Shrinks with fellow Blockstream researcher Mikhail Kudinov, called it the first concrete post-quantum signature proposal designed specifically for Bitcoin. He added that it is not intended to be Bitcoin's final signature system and is also not the best option on every measure. Shrinks uses a fresh one-time key whenever a wallet signs a transaction. The wallet therefore has to keep track of which keys have already been used and ensure they are never accidentally reused. And that record would need to remain correct across phones, hardware wallets, and backups. Restoring an old wallet copy or losing that information could make spending more cumbersome. The system is still early, however. The proposal states that its formal security proof is still pending, while the reference software has not undergone a formal security audit and is also not intended for production use, at least not yet. Blockstream demonstrated shrink-signed transactions in March on Liquid, the separate blockchain it operates. Bringing shrinks to Bitcoin itself, however, would require a soft fork or a backwards compatible change to Bitcoin's rules, along with enough support across the network to activate it, pausing to say, good luck. The proposal comes as Ethereum researchers moved in the same direction earlier this week, proposing changes to the system validators use to deposit funds so it can eventually accept new types of cryptographic keys. Yeah, well, I don't give that much of a shit about Ethereum, so there you go. I don't know. It's going to be too cumbersome for users. For hardcore users, sure, easy enough. But for general public guys, we've already seen problems with the general public just not giving enough of a shit about how this stuff works to do things like self-custody safely. But what do you expect? Everybody's like, they're trying to get their kids to school. They're trying to go to their job. They're trying to make the mortgage payment. They're wondering why their dollar doesn't go as far at the grocery store anymore. And no, I'm not blaming Trump. They're all at fault. Biden is at fault. Obama's at fault. Bush is at fault. Trump's at fault. They all suck, right? But it's the political environment and the absolute idiocy that occurs there. You could actually interchange the word idiocy with "we don't fucking care about you" just fine. So, but with all that going on, nobody's got time to dig into anything, much less the vagaries of cryptographic signature schema in Bitcoin. So I don't think this one goes anywhere, especially considering that these one-time key things, that's a lot to keep track of. And if you're using a singular wallet across a mobile phone, like your I don't know, like a node that you're running at home, anything else, and they've all got to basically corroborate each other as to which one-time keys have been used and which ones haven't. I don't know, man. I don't. It's not that it won't work. I'm sure it works fine, but how do you can't really expect Joe Blow plumber on the street to be able to have enough time to give over to learning why this is important and how it functions so that they're not confused every time they push the button to send Bitcoin. But it doesn't matter because something else has occurred. First quantum resistant Bitcoin transaction has been successfully executed according to Starkware. Danny Park writing for The Block to finish us out for the day. Starkware announced today that it has completed the first ever quantum resistant Bitcoin transaction. This development counters the idea that a network fork is the only way to secure Bitcoin holdings against quantum computing risks, the company said. Avihu Levy, the head of Starkware's application division, has devised a method that adds a extra lock to protect holdings by using signature grinding to prevent use of public key data while transactions sit in a Bitcoin mempool. The Bitcoin transaction is exposed to quantum attacks when it waits in the mempool before it is confirmed. During the brief window, it reveals the mathematical material that could give a future quantum computer an opportunity to forge a signature and steal the funds. Starkware says signature grinding closes that window by refusing to accept the first valid signature and instead brute forcing millions of candidates until one has the shape that does not expose the public key material to quantum computers. This method is deliberately expensive and can take hours of computing to produce one single transaction, Starkware added. Quote, there is a catch for now. Bitcoin's network only passes along transactions written in the standard formats that it recognizes. And this one is unusual enough that ordinary nodes would simply ignore it. So instead of going into the public queue, it has to be handed straight to a miner willing to accept it. End quote. Starkware added that Mara mined its transaction through the Slipstream service. Despite his discovery, Levy favors making Bitcoin quantum safe through a protocol level upgrade. This view is shared by Starkware CEO Eli Ben Sassoon, who said Levy's method can assist the network until it implements a permanent fork. Avihu's breakthrough, and this is a quote, is important because it gives the psychological reassurances which we need and which the asset itself needs. The important thing is that opportunities are seized. I've said before that crypto is behaving like passengers on the Titanic. What Avihu has illustrated is that there are lifeboats. That is not a reason to relax. It is a reason to build more lifeboats and to build them right now. So again, that's the end of the article. Again, more expensive, can take hours to compute, must be handed directly to a miner. Who do you expect to use this shit? Institutions, exchanges, but not general guys on the street. Ain't gonna happen. I mean, honestly, even hardcore Bitcoiners that are, just guys on the street that actually understand this shit, even they're not going to put up with this. So I don't think this is going anywhere, but that doesn't make it any less important for this particular reason. A quantum resistant transaction has been mined and put into a block. Well, okay, the transaction isn't mined. The transaction was confirmed. The transaction was found to be valid, and the transaction was put into a mined block. And now that transaction is part of the Bitcoin blockchain forever, and it is quantum resistant. But that doesn't necessarily help the other issues of quantum. Being able to break or crack into the private key given a public address that can be found on the Bitcoin blockchain. That's still an issue. And it's probably why they're saying, hey, we really need to do this at the protocol level. I mean, it's great and all, but this is just, for lack of a better term, should be considered a successful experiment, but not a real world fix for the looming quantum threat. And while I have said on several occasions, I'm not all that concerned with quantum, I'm just not, it's not that that's not true. It's just that I'm not concerned with it right now. Maybe in there will be a point of time in which I become very concerned with it, but I'm not concerned with it right now. And there's not much else that I can tell, how to tell anybody what you should think. I just don't think that either of the two quantum things that we just read, I don't think that first of all, they're not ready for prime time. And second of all, even if they were, I don't think that they're going to have sticking power. I think they're just going to fall away and something else will end up replacing it. And I get the feeling that no matter what happens, it's going to be at a protocol level. And it's going to have to be a soft fork. How that actually is going to look, I don't know. But given how hard it is to change Bitcoin, it's going to be a fight. It'll be a real fight. So prepare yourselves accordingly. All right, that's the end of the show for today. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope you are set insofar as what's going on in Bitcoin today and around the world. And I will see you on the other side. This has been Bitcoin and I'm your host, David Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and hope to see you again real soon. Have a great day.